Ever feel like you're drowning in a sea of conflicting information? You're not alone. In today's digital age, we're constantly bombarded by a tidal wave of information. From social media feeds to news outlets, from podcasts to academic articles, there's no shortage of information at our fingertips. But here's the catch. Not all information is created equal. Consider this. A major event happens on the other side of the world. The news breaks, and within minutes, a multitude of interpretations begin to flood your screens. One source claims it's an act of aggression. Another interprets it as a defensive move. Some sources say it's a sign of an impending crisis, while others brush it off as a minor incident. Suddenly, you find yourself standing at the crossroads of conflicting narratives, each vying for your attention, each claiming to hold the truth. This, my friends, is the modern-day maze of information. It's complex, it's overwhelming, and it's all too easy to lose your way. Now, you might be wondering, why does this matter? Well, in a world where sensational headlines often overshadow nuanced, fact-based narratives, it's more important than ever to be able to discern fact from fiction. Misinformation, disinformation, half-truths, these are not just buzzwords. They shape our perceptions, influence our decisions, and can have real-world consequences. So what's the solution? How do we navigate this labyrinth of information where every turn presents a new narrative, a new perspective, a new claim to truth? The answer lies in developing a reliable compass, a tool that guides us through the maze, helping us separate the wheat from the chaff, the facts from the falsehoods. And that tool is critical thinking. Critical thinking is our shield against misinformation, our beacon in the fog of conflicting narratives. It equips us with the skills to question, to analyze, to evaluate, so we can make informed decisions based on facts, not just catchy headlines or persuasive rhetoric. To navigate this maze of information, we need a reliable compass, and that is critical thinking. So what is this thing called critical thinking, and why is it so important? Imagine you're in a dense forest of information, where every tree is a fact, an opinion, or a claim vying for your attention. How do you find your way out? How do you determine which trees are strong, healthy, and reliable, and which ones are weak or rotten? That's where critical thinking comes into play. Critical thinking is like your compass in this forest. It's a tool that helps you navigate through the information overload, allowing you to discern fact from fiction and truth from falsehood. It's not about doubting everything you see or hear, but rather, it's about questioning, investigating, and making informed judgments. The importance of critical thinking can't be overstated. In a world where information is readily available at our fingertips, the ability to critically evaluate this information is vital. Whether you're reading a news article, listening to a podcast, or engaged in a debate, critical thinking empowers you to make informed decisions and form logical conclusions. But what does a critical thinker look like? What are the characteristics that set them apart? Firstly, a critical thinker is skeptical. This doesn't mean they're constantly cynical or distrusting, but rather, they don't accept information at face value. They question it, scrutinize it, and seek evidence before forming a judgment. Secondly, a critical thinker is open-minded. They're willing to consider different viewpoints, even those that challenge their own beliefs. This doesn't mean they're indecisive or easily swayed, but rather, they understand that the world isn't black and white, and that understanding often requires exploring the gray areas. Finally, a critical thinker possesses strong analytical skills. They don't just passively consume information, but actively engage with it. They break down complex ideas, identify underlying assumptions, and assess whether the conclusions follow logically from the premises. But even the sharpest critical thinkers aren't immune to cognitive biases and logical fallacies. These are mental traps that can cloud our judgment and lead us astray. Cognitive biases are systematic errors in our thinking that affect the decisions and judgments we make. For instance, confirmation bias is the tendency to favor information that confirms our pre-existing beliefs, while ignoring or dismissing information that challenges them. Logical fallacies, on the other hand, are flaws in reasoning that undermine the logic of an argument. For example, the ad hominem fallacy involves attacking the person making the argument, rather than addressing the argument itself. Being aware of these biases and fallacies is a crucial part of critical thinking. It allows us to check our own thinking for errors and to spot when others are using flawed reasoning. So what's the takeaway from all this? Critical thinking is a powerful tool that allows us to navigate the maze of information that surrounds us. It equips us with the skills to question, to investigate, and to make informed judgments. It encourages skepticism, open-mindedness, and analytical thinking, and it alerts us to the presence of cognitive biases and logical fallacies, helping us to avoid these common pitfalls. Armed with critical thinking, you can cut through the noise and see things as they really are. Remember, the forest of information may be dense and bewildering, but with critical thinking as your compass, you'll never lose your way. Now let's dive into the nitty-gritty of critical thinking. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a vast forest, armed with nothing but a compass and your wits. The undergrowth is thick, the path is unclear, and there's no telling what lies ahead. This is precisely what navigating through the world of information feels like. But don't worry, with the right skills, we can find our way. The first step on this journey is questioning. It's the compass that guides us. It's all about asking the right questions. Why? How? What evidence supports this? These questions are our guiding stars, leading us through the maze of information, helping us discern between what's real and what's not. But it's not enough just to ask. We need to know where to look for answers. That leads us to our second step, researching. The internet is a vast repository teeming with information, but not all of it is reliable. We have to put on our detective hats and evaluate sources for credibility and bias. Think of it this way. If you're building a house, you wouldn't use rotten wood, would you? You'd seek out the best materials. Similarly, when we're building our understanding, we need to pick our sources wisely. Look for those that are credible and unbiased. Check the credentials of the author, the date of publication, and cross-reference the information with other reliable sources. The next step in our journey is analyzing arguments. Each argument is like a puzzle, made up of premises and conclusions. Our job is to take these pieces apart and examine them. We need to test for validity. Are the premises true? Does the conclusion logically follow from the premises? Often we'll find that an argument that seems sound at first glance crumbles under scrutiny. But wait, there's more. We also need to consider multiple perspectives. It's easy to get caught up in our own point of view, but the world is a vast and diverse place. By looking at issues from different viewpoints, we can gain a more comprehensive understanding. It's like climbing a mountain. The view from the base is completely different from the view at the summit. Each perspective offers unique insights. Finally, we come to perhaps the most challenging step, reflecting on personal biases. We all have them. They're the product of our experiences, our upbringing, our culture. They shape the way we see the world, but they can also blind us, skew our understanding. That's why it's so important to recognize and question them. Take a moment to think about it. Have you ever jumped to a conclusion based on incomplete information? Have you ever ignored evidence that contradicted your beliefs? These are signs of bias. By recognizing them, we can strive to overcome them. So, there you have it. The nuts and bolts of critical thinking. Questioning, researching, analyzing arguments, considering multiple perspectives, and reflecting on personal biases. Each step is essential, and together, they form a powerful toolkit for navigating the complex world of information. But remember, like any skill, critical thinking takes practice. It's not something you master overnight. It's a journey, a continuous process of learning and growing. So don't be discouraged if you stumble along the way. Each mistake is an opportunity to learn, to become a better critical thinker. So the next time you're faced with a sea of information, don't be daunted. Take a deep breath, arm yourself with these critical thinking skills, and dive in. Engage with the world around you. Question, research, analyze, consider, reflect. With each step, you'll find yourself moving closer to clarity, cutting through the confusion, and uncovering the truth. Remember, critical thinking is a journey, not a destination. So, how does critical thinking work in the real world? Let's dive right into an example. Imagine you're scrolling through your social media feed and you stumble upon a headline that reads, "Study finds that drinking 8 cups of coffee a day can increase your lifespan." Now, your first reaction might be to run to the nearest coffee shop and order a gallon of the stuff. But hold on, let's put our critical thinking caps on and navigate this information maze. The first step in our critical thinking journey is questioning. Ask yourself, why does the study claim this? How was the research conducted? What evidence supports this claim? These questions help us to not accept the information at face value and to start digging deeper. Next, we move on to researching. We need to find the original study and evaluate the source for credibility and bias. Is the study published in a reputable scientific journal? Who funded the research? Are there any conflicts of interest? It's crucial to remember that not all sources are created equal, and we must be discerning in our evaluation. Now that we've gathered all this information, it's time to analyze the argument. We need to break down the argument into premises and conclusions. The premise in this case might be something like, researchers conducted a study with 1,000 participants over 10 years and found that those who drank 8 cups of coffee a day lived longer. The conclusion is, drinking 8 cups of coffee a day can increase your lifespan. Now, we need to test the validity of this argument. Is the conclusion logically derived from the premises? Are there any alternative explanations or variables that haven't been taken into account? Next, we have to consider multiple perspectives. Are there other studies with different findings? What do other experts in the field say about this research? Gathering a range of views helps us to gain a more comprehensive understanding of the issue. Lastly, we need to reflect on our personal biases. Are we more inclined to believe this study because we love drinking coffee and want an excuse to drink more? It's important to be aware of how our personal biases can influence our interpretation of information. As we walk through this process, we can start to see the complexities of the issue. Perhaps the study didn't account for other lifestyle factors. Maybe the participants who drank 8 cups of coffee a day also exercised regularly and ate a balanced diet. Maybe the increase in lifespan was statistically insignificant. Or perhaps the study was funded by a major coffee corporation, which might have a vested interest in promoting coffee consumption. By applying critical thinking, we're able to navigate the information maze with clarity. We can discern fact from fiction, identify biases, and make more informed decisions. Instead of blindly accepting the headline, we've engaged in a thoughtful analysis of the claim. And this isn't just applicable to reading news articles or social media posts. It's a valuable skill that can be applied in all areas of life, from making personal decisions to understanding complex societal issues. The more we practice, the better we get at it. Now, I encourage you to apply these steps yourself. The next time you come across a sensational headline or a controversial topic, don't just accept it at face value. Ask questions, do your research, analyze the argument, consider multiple perspectives, and reflect on your own biases. This is critical thinking in action. As you can see, critical thinking allows us to make sense of complex issues and make informed decisions. So where do we go from here? Well, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've learned. We began by acknowledging the overwhelming sea of information we're swimming in every day. News reports, social media feeds, scientific studies, and more, all clamoring for our attention and often presenting conflicting viewpoints. It's easy to feel lost, isn't it? But then we explored critical thinking and discovered it's not just a fancy term for doubting everything we hear. It's a systematic approach that involves skepticism, open-mindedness, and analytical skills. We learned that a critical thinker doesn't just blindly accept or reject information, but seeks to understand it, question it, and evaluate it. We delved into the process of critical thinking, understanding that it's not a one-off exercise, but a continuous journey. It begins with questioning, asking the why, the how, and demanding evidence. It continues with researching, where we don't just consume information but investigate its sources, scrutinizing for credibility and bias. We then learned how to analyze arguments, breaking them down into premises and conclusions, and testing for validity. We realized the importance of considering multiple perspectives, and we also acknowledged the need to reflect on our own biases, because let's face it, we all have them. Then we put all this theory into practice. We took a real-world topic and walked through the critical thinking process, demonstrating that these aren't just abstract concepts, but practical tools we can use every day. But remember, like any skill, critical thinking improves with practice. It's like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. So don't stop here. Take these tools and apply them in your everyday life. When you read the news, when you engage in a debate, when you make decisions, big or small, don't just reserve it for the classroom or the academic world. And here's the exciting part. As you become a more proficient critical thinker, you'll find that you're not just navigating the maze of information more effectively. You're also becoming a more informed citizen, a more effective communicator, a more thoughtful decision maker. You're not just learning to think, you're learning to think well, to think clearly, to think critically. And don't worry if you don't get it right every time. Critical thinking isn't about being right all the time. It's about seeking truth, asking questions, and continually learning and growing. It's a journey, not a destination. With critical thinking, you can confidently navigate the maze of information and reach your own informed conclusions. So, go forth and think critically. And have confidence in your own gut feeling when something seems to be sensational. Take a few minutes to explore the questions in the link below this video. And relax. There is time to decide what you want to believe, and there is value in getting comfortable with your own beliefs. There may be even more value in being willing to challenge them. And, at the end of the day, challenging what we believe, what we read, what we hear, may be where we find the most success in thinking critically.